Myths are the stories that we tell ourselves at night, the great epics recorded throughout time in scripture and art, the moral compass with which we lead our lives. Or they were. Myths are often seen as a relic of the past, which has no place in the present apart from for fun, like in Disney's Hercules. But that was not always the case, and it isn't the case now. Just a quick disclaimer, most of this information has come from Dr. David A. Leeming. As always, this is just one interpretation of myths and mythology. There are some mentions of religion, but in no way should this be taken as a direct criticism or undermine a religion in any way. They just represent his beliefs and a different type of interpretation. Now, myths, folklore, or whatever you might call them, are at their core a story that's really significant for a group of people. And they can be found all around the world. America, South America, Africa, Asia, Australasia, it really doesn't matter. Now, for example, the Greek goddess Persephone is used to describe the changing of the seasons, whereas the Zulu creation myth is used to unite the Zulus as one culture, in a similar way that a country has its own history to unite the people as a country as opposed to random individuals. Now, myths first started in prehistoric times before writing was actually invented, and it's often shown through figurines and cave paintings. When myths really started to become widespread, they first started to focus on fertility, and this is because they happened around the time when agriculture was created. Now, oftentimes, what's fascinating is that myths generally are created anonymously and evolve as a culture evolves. However, there are some exceptions. For example, Homer is supposedly attributed with writing the Odyssey, which is based on Greek mythology. And here is one such story, this time from Western Africa, Anase, the spider trickster, the greatest heist of all time. This is the story when a spirit tried to capture all of the world's wisdom. Anase, in the form of a spider, once decided to hoard the entire world's wisdom in a pot for himself. He succeeded in collecting all of the wisdom from around the globe into a pot that he kept close by him. But he had to find some way to hide the pot. The wisdom was all for him, he couldn't let anyone else have it. So he came across a tree that he thought he could hide the pot at the top of. He tied the pot to the front of his body and then made his way to try and climb it. Again and again he tried to climb the tree, but he kept sliding down and losing his grip. He went back and his son, who had followed him, suggested that he tie the pot to his back so that he could climb more easily. And Anase did just that. He tied the pot to his back and tried to make the climb again, getting higher and higher. Anase had almost made it to the top of the tree where he was going to hide his pot, but suddenly the pot started to slip out from its ties, falling until it hit the ground. "No!" Anase cried, and just as he was making his way back down the tree, a rainstorm appeared out of nowhere, washing the pot into the river. Slowly but surely, the wisdom that had been collected in the pot leaked out into the river and then out into the wider ocean. So now that everyone in the world owns a little bit of wisdom. Now, typically you have three different types of myths. The first one is a creation myth, which focuses on creating the culture, the universe, whatever it may be. For example, Genesis in Christianity. The second type of myth focuses on deities, deity myths, the gods and goddesses above, and those who supposedly control the universe. For example, in ancient Egypt, they were called the Ogdoad, literally meaning 8. Whereas in ancient Greece, they were called the Olympians and were headed by Zeus, which is one of the most famous gods that people will actually know. Typically, these gods and goddesses were part of a family, or what they may also be known as a Parthenon, rather than isolated random gods and goddesses that didn't really have much connectivity or any relation to one another. Now, the third type of myth is a hero myth. Now, these can actually represent entire cultures, and they tend to focus on extraordinary individuals. For example, the English King Arthur and his quest for a Holy Grail. Quite often, hero myths have certain patterns that they all follow. For example, there might be a quest, there might be a descent into hell or the underworld. It really depends on where the myth originated from. Now, there have been some attempts to actually place myths in history, rather than just see them as some sort of cultural phenomena. For example, there are many flood myths across the world. So some have tried to link it to the Egyptian Nile or the modern day Iraqi Tigris or Euphrates River. The problem with doing this though, even if they can show actual evidence that it happened and create the links, is that it often misses out on the metaphorical and symbolic meanings of these myths. And to some cultures, that's actually what matters more, not really whether it happened or not, and if they can remember the exact details of a historic event through a story that's been brought through the myth. Most myths can be seen to be religious in that they create a link to religious rituals and theologies. A creation myth creates a divine justification for cultures, whereas a deity myth helps to create an understanding of the world. For example, in the many stories found throughout the Vedas of Hinduism, hero myths tend to have nothing to do with religion at all, and might even just be for entertainment, like the sexual actions of the North American coyote. The religions of today do have myths, even if you're a literal believer of your own religion. For example, in Buddhism it's stated that Queen Maya conceived the Buddha in a dream with a white elephant, quite literally. Now, if you're a follower of Buddhism, somebody that really does truly believe in the literature, then this would have actually happened to you. But to everyone else, it will just be a symbolic story that means something metaphorically. This is true even if you're a follower of Sikhism, Shintoism, Judaism. It really doesn't matter. Now, given the number of similarities of myths across the world, there's been attempts to create a standard framework to sort of link them all together, which is called the world myth. Now, often in the world myth, first of all the deities get created, then the universe, and then heroes themselves. The flood myths around the world is one example of a similarity that can be found in many different cultures. Often in this world myth, there is a battle between good and evil. There's always a trickster. There's often a fight amongst the gods. And all of these similarities seems to suggest that either there are events that happened to a wide number of people that sort of link them all together as conversations happen through trade routes and various things like that, or there's actually just a real core to what is the human experience. And that human experience is what's actually fed into a lot of these similarities. After all, everyone did agriculture, everyone brought up a family, everyone really struggled with trying to find a water source. So maybe myths are actually just an explanation of what it is to be truly human. Science is often treated as another system of thought or a belief system, in the same way that religion is used to describe what we see in the world around us, and it's constantly evolving. Previously, it was thought that the Earth was at the centre of the solar system, until it wasn't. Now science explains that it all started with the Big Bang. Thought experiments like Schrodinger's cat can explain the world of quantum mechanics, or at least it tries to. People may disagree on the correct belief system, science or religion, but there are similarities between the two. Another example, which doesn't involve science or religion at all, can be found in Nazi Germany. In a more simple way, Hitler's belief that the superiority of the Aryan race is one example of a hero myth. Along with it, shares of rituals, art and culture. So why do we tell myths? Why do myths actually exist? And the truth is that we really don't know. Despite the many interpretations, despite everything that you find in academic articles, because this is a cultural phenomenon, we might never know. I mean, we don't even know how the brain properly works, and we live in the 21st century. The truth is, though, is that when you really boil it down, they are stories. And human beings love telling stories because we enjoy it. We do it all the time. Back in prehistoric times when we used to do it around a campfire. So maybe that's the answer. It might not be the most correct answer, it might not be the most complete answer, but it is an answer. Human beings are just natural born storytellers.